Living without a fridge in a world filled with convenience and electricity, refrigeration is something most people take for granted. Open a fridge, and fresh meat, vegetables, and dairy are there, waiting to be cooked or eaten. But for the Amish, a group of traditionalist Christian communities in North America who live without modern technology, keeping food cold without a refrigerator is not just a choice. It's a way of life rooted in centuries of tradition. The Amish people believe in living simply, often avoiding electricity, automobiles, and modern appliances. This lifestyle comes from their religious principles and commitment to community values. As a result, they've mastered the art of food preservation using methods that predate modern refrigeration. Their techniques are not only effective but often healthier and more environmentally friendly than today's processed food methods. Among all foods, meat is perhaps the most challenging to preserve. It spoils quickly, attracts bacteria, and must be handled carefully to avoid waste and illness. Yet, the Amish have preserved meat for generations using methods like salt curing, smoking, brining, rendering fat, and more. These time-tested techniques allow them to store meat for weeks, months, or even years, without a fridge or freezer. This essay explores how the Amish preserve meat without refrigeration, using 12 detailed preservation methods grouped into 6 main parts. Each method reflects not only old-world knowledge, but also deep respect for food, nature, and tradition. Salt curing. Nature's oldest preservative, salt curing, is perhaps the most ancient and widely known method of meat preservation, and it remains central to Amish food storage practices. Long before refrigerators were invented, people across cultures used salt to prevent meat from spoiling. The Amish continue to rely on this method today, especially for preserving pork, beef, and sometimes fish. So, how does salt curing work? Salt is a natural desiccant, meaning it pulls moisture out of things. In meat, moisture is the perfect environment for bacteria to grow. When you remove the water, you make it much harder for bacteria and mold to survive. Salt also directly kills many harmful microbes by creating a highly concentrated environment that disrupts their cellular function. The Amish use 2 main types of salt curing: dry curing, wet curing, or brining. Dry curing and dry curing, meat is covered entirely with a layer of coarse salt. Sometimes, sugar and spices are added for flavor and balance. The salt draws out moisture over time and forms a crust that seals the meat, protecting it from contamination. The meat is typically placed in a wooden box or barrel in a cool, dry area, often a basement or shed. Over several days, or even weeks, the salt does its work. It penetrates the meat, preserving it from the inside out. The Amish pay careful attention to temperature and humidity. The ideal range is 34 degrees Fahrenheit to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 degree Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. Cold enough to discourage bacteria, but not freezing. In colder months, outdoor sheds may naturally provide the perfect climate for this. After the curing process is done, the meat can be hung in a smokehouse or wrapped in cloth and stored in a dry place. Properly cured meat can last for months or longer. Wet curing, brining. Wet curing involves soaking meat in a brine solution made from salt, water, and sometimes sugar and spices. This process is a little quicker and allows for more even flavor distribution. The meat is submerged in the brine for several days, depending on its size and thickness. Once cured, the meat is usually cooked, smoked, or stored in jars or crocks for future use. Why salt curing is still used today, even outside the Amish world. Salt curing is making a comeback. It's part of the broader movement toward traditional whole food preservation. Salt-cured meats often have a deeper, more complex flavor and don't rely on artificial preservatives or additives. For the Amish, this method is more than practical. It's spiritual. It reflects patience, discipline, and a close relationship with the food they raise. Nothing is rushed. Everything has a season and a process. Smoking plus sugar curing smoking. Adding flavor and extending shelf life after salt curing. Smoking is the next step in the Amish meat preservation process, and one that adds not only protection, but also deep, smoky flavor. For the Amish, smoking is both a science and an art, passed down through generations. It's a traditional technique that transforms cured meat into something more durable, more delicious, and often more nutritious. How smoking works: smoking meat is a process where the meat is exposed to smoke from burning hardwood, typically in a specially built smokehouse. This does 2 main things: dries the surface of the meat to prevent bacteria and mold. infuses the meat with antimicrobial compounds and antioxidants from the smoke. The smoke from burning wood contains phenols, acids, and alcohols, natural preservatives that help protect the meat from decay. Smoking also adds a protective coating to the outside of the meat, like a natural seal. The Amish smokehouse in Amish communities. Smokehouses are common in backyards or near barns. They're small wooden or brick buildings with hooks or racks inside to hang meat. At the base is a fire pit, where wood such as hickory, apple, cherry, or maple is slowly burned to produce rich smoke. The process can take hours to days, depending on the meat and the desired flavor. Cold smoking, under 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius adds flavor, but doesn't cook the meat. It must be pre-cured. Hot smoking, above 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius cooks the meat and preserves it simultaneously. The Amish prefer cold smoking for hams and bacon, sometimes smoking them for several days to ensure thorough protection and a smoky, earthy taste. Seasonal and communal smoking is often done in the fall or early winter when the air is cool and dry. Ideal conditions for preservation. In many Amish families, it's a communal event. Multiple families may bring their meats to one smokehouse and take turns tending the fire. Types of smoked meats: bacon, cured and then smoked until firm and deeply flavored. Ham, a staple in Amish homes, often smoked after being cured with salt or brine. Sausages, homemade links filled with ground meat, herbs, and spices, then hung to smoke and dry. Smoking doesn't just protect meat. It creates signature flavors unique to each family or community. Over time, these flavors become associated with certain households, much like family recipes. Sugar curing, a sweet and savory preservation. Though salt is the main preservative in curing, sugar also plays a valuable role in Amish meat preservation. Sugar curing balances the harshness of salt, adds subtle sweetness, and contributes to the final texture and color of the meat. How sugar curing works: sugar curing typically involves mixing brown sugar, white sugar, or molasses with salt and spices. The Amish may add ingredients like black pepper, coriander, cloves. Allspice. The meat is then rubbed with this dry mixture or soaked in a sugar-salt brine, similar to wet curing. While salt draws out moisture and kills bacteria, sugar helps stabilize the flavor, feed beneficial bacteria, and control fermentations, like sausage making. Improve the meat's appearance and tenderness. What meats are sugar cured? Holiday hams, glazed and cured with sugar for a festive flavor. Bacon, often sugar cured for a slightly sweet balance. Smoked sausages, many include sugar to aid fermentation and taste. Sugar curing is especially popular in winter months when families prepare special meats for holidays like Christmas or Easter. It represents warmth, tradition, and celebration. The Amish philosophy behind smoking and sugar curing. To the Amish, preserving meat is not simply about utility. It's about respect. Every animal is raised with care, and nothing is wasted. Smoking and sugar curing preserve not just meat, but also family history and seasonal rhythms. No machines, no additives, just fire, wood, salt, sugar, and time. Vinegar brining plus rendering. Lard vinegar brining, a tangy preservation method. While salt and sugar are classic preservatives, the Amish also make use of acidity, especially for vinegar, to prevent meat from spoiling. Vinegar brining is a lesser-known but highly effective technique in Amish preservation, especially for small cuts of meat, sausages, or even pickled meat products like souse and head cheese. How vinegar preserves meat. Vinegar contains acetic acid, which lowers the pH of the meat and creates an acidic environment that most bacteria cannot survive in. This method doesn't just preserve the meat, it transforms its taste and texture into something distinctive. The basic process includes creating a vinegar solution, usually a mix of vinegar, water, salt, and spices. Boiling or simmering the solution. This ensures everything is sterile and the flavors blend. Pouring the hot liquid over the meat, often cooked or parboiled beforehand. Sealing the meat in jars or crocks. Once cooled, they can be stored for weeks or months. Sometimes, meat is lightly smoked or cooked first to reduce bacterial load, then submerged in vinegar brine. Common Amish pickled meats: pickled pork hocks, pickled sausages, beef tongue, or hardhead cheese. A gelatinous pork dish in vinegar. These foods are often eaten cold, straight from the jar, and are typically served with bread, potatoes, or root vegetables. They're a reliable source of protein during long winters when fresh meat is not readily available. Rendering lard. Sealing in freshness and flavor. Another age-old technique the Amish use is rendering lard, a process of slowly melting fat to separate impurities and produce clean, pure fat. This rendered lard is then used to preserve meat by sealing it off from air, an oxygen-free environment that prevents spoilage. How it works: after cooking or seasoning the meat, it is packed tightly into jars or crocks. Hot, liquid lard is then poured over the top to completely cover the meat, creating a fat barrier that blocks air and bacteria. Once cooled, the fat hardens, and the meat is safely stored for weeks or months, often in a cellar or pantry. This method is known as confit in French cooking, but the Amish learned it from their German, Swiss, and Eastern European ancestors, where preserving meat in fat was a common practice. What meats are preserved this way? Pork shoulder or belly sausage patties, goose or duck confit. Though less common among Amish, cooked beef or venison chunks. Lard itself is also a valuable product. Once rendered and stored in jars, it's used in baking, frying, and greasing pans. Amish cooks prize homemade lard for its flavor and utility. It replaces butter or shortening in many recipes. How lard is rendered: cut fat into chunks, simmer slowly in a heavy pot, often over an outdoor fire or wood stove. Strain out cracklings, the crispy leftovers. Pour hot lard into sterilized jars. Rendering fat is often done in the fall after butchering. The entire family may be involved: stirring, straining, packing, and labeling. Why these methods still matter: both vinegar brining and lard preservation serve a dual purpose. They protect the meat and create unique food traditions. Pickled meats offer a tangy contrast to sweet baked goods and starchy vegetables. Meat preserved in lard retains juiciness and richness that modern refrigeration can't duplicate. For the Amish, these aren't just practical methods. They're about honoring every part of the animal, reducing waste, and passing down the rhythms of self-reliant life. Root cellars plus outdoor freezing. Root cellars, nature's refrigerator. Before the invention of electric refrigeration, people relied on the Earth's own insulation to keep food cool. The Amish root cellar is a perfect example of using natural elements for food storage. While not specifically designed for meat alone, root cellars play a vital role in extending the life of smoked, cured, or rendered meats, especially through summer months when temperatures rise. What is a root cellar? A root cellar is a partially or fully underground room, often beneath a house, barn, or built into a hillside. The soil around it maintains a fairly consistent cool temperature and humidity, ideal for storing perishable foods. Typical root cellars maintain temperature around 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius to 10 degrees Celsius. Humidity around 85% to 95%. This makes them ideal not only for root vegetables, but also for salt-cured meats, canned goods, buckets of rendered lard, or sealed crocks of pickled meat. How Amish use root cellars for meat: hanging smoked sausages or hams from wooden beams, stacking jars of pressure-canned meats on shelves, storing buckets of lard-covered meat, placing crocks of vinegar-pickled meat in dark corners. The goal is to keep everything cool, dark, and stable. Sudden temperature changes or light exposure can lead to mold or spoilage. Amish families carefully monitor and maintain these cellars, sometimes even installing primitive air vents for temperature control. Outdoor freezing. Winter's natural freezer. In regions with harsh winters, nature provides another powerful preservation tool: outdoor freezing. During the coldest months, the Amish take advantage of sub-freezing temperatures to store meat outside, often in sheds, hanging from trees, or buried in snow. How it's done: meat is first cleaned, butchered, and often salt-cured or smoked. It is then stored in a protective layer, such as canvas, cheesecloth, or even plastic in more modern Amish communities. The meat is placed outdoors, suspended from poles, stored in barrels, or buried under snow and straw insulation. This turns barns, porches, or cellars into makeshift freezers. This method is highly seasonal. Once temperatures rise above freezing, the meat must be eaten, preserved another way, like canning, or moved to a colder root cellar or spring house. The wisdom of seasonal storage. The Amish way of life follows nature's rhythm. Summer is for growing. Fall is for harvesting. Winter is for storing and conserving. Outdoor freezing and root cellars are part of a larger system of living with the environment instead of relying on artificial solutions. What's impressive is that none of these tools require electricity. They are based on design, tradition, and timing. The community works together, plans ahead, and adapts to weather patterns, things that modern society is only now beginning to revalue as sustainable. Drying meat plus pressure canning. Drying meat. The art of jerky drying is one of the oldest methods of preserving meat, older even than salt curing or smoking. For the Amish, making jerky or dried meat is not just a snack creation. It's a reliable and lightweight way to store protein for long periods, especially in warmer seasons or during travel. How drying preserves meat. Drying removes moisture from meat, an essential condition for bacterial growth. With no moisture, most spoilage organisms can't survive. The result is lightweight, shelf-stable meat that can last for months when stored in a cool, dry place. While commercial jerky often uses dehydrators, the Amish rely on sun-drying, weather permitting, wood stoves with vents open to allow airflow, smokehouses used at low heat for long durations, hanging strips near warm chimneys in winter. How Amish jerky is made. Meat is sliced thinly, usually beef, venison, or turkey. It is marinated or dry rubbed with salt, pepper, vinegar, molasses, and spices. The strips are hung on racks or skewered on sticks. Heat and airflow are maintained until the meat becomes leathery but flexible. No preservatives, no chemical flavor enhancers. Just careful slicing, seasoning, and patience. Benefits of dried meat: doesn't require refrigeration, high in protein, low in fat, perfect for travel, hunting, or lunch pails, easily rehydrated for stews and soups. Jerky is a favorite among Amish children and workers alike. It's often stored in wax paper, glass jars, or tin containers, and can be found in every home, especially during winter or trips to the market. Pressure canning. Long-term meat storage while drying and curing are great for certain cuts. The Amish also preserve cooked meats and entire meals using a more modern, but still electricity-free method: pressure canning. This technique allows safe long-term storage of meats in glass jars, often for 1 to 2 years. How pressure canning works: meat is cut into chunks, browned, or partially cooked. It is packed into sterilized mason jars, sometimes with broth, water, or gravy. The jars are sealed with metal lids and bands. A pressure canner, not a water bath, is heated on a wood or gas stove to kill all bacteria, including Clostridium botulinum, which causes botulism. After processing, often 75–90 minutes, jars are cooled and stored. Because meat is low acid, pressure is required, not just heat, to ensure safety. Amish households that pressure canned meat typically have checklists, timers, and sterile environments for this important task. Common meats for pressure canning: beef stew meat, chicken and turkey chunk, sausage patties, or lynx pork shoulder in gravy, venison in broth. Many Amish families even pressure can entire meals like meat and beans soups, chili, or even beef and noodles. Storage and use: once sealed and cooled, the jars are labeled with the date and stored in root cellars or pantries. When needed, a jar is simply opened, heated, and served, perfect for busy days or emergencies. Why these methods matter: drying and pressure canning are the perfect pair. One offers lightweight portability, the other full, ready-to-eat meals. Together, they reflect the Amish values of resourcefulness, efficiency, and long-term thinking. Instead of buying frozen dinners or processed meats, the Amish put in the work during harvest season so that they can eat from their own pantry year-round. It's a strategy of preparation, not reaction, one that modern preppers and homesteaders increasingly admire. Pemmican plus conclusion. Pemmican, a traditional energy source. Among the most fascinating and ancient meat preservation methods still in use today is pemmican, a food originally developed by Native American tribes and later adopted by settlers, pioneers, and even Amish families who appreciate its incredible shelf life and nutritional value. What is pemmican? Pemmican is a high-energy food made by mixing dried, powdered meat, usually beef, venison, or buffalo, rendered fat, lard or tallow, optional, dried fruits like cranberries or chokecherries. The result is a dense, calorie-rich food that requires no refrigeration, resists spoilage, and can last months or even years if stored properly. How it's made: dry meat completely, often in a jerky, then crush or grind into a fine powder. Render fat until it is clear, clean, and liquid. Combine meat powder with fat in a roughly 1:1 ratio. Optional, add dried berries or herbs for flavor and extra nutrients. Press into containers, molds, tins, or cloth wrap blocks. Let cool and harden. Store in cool, dry places. Unlike jerky or canned meats, pemmican doesn't require heating before eating. It can be sliced or shaved into soups, mashed with potatoes, or eaten on its own as a survival food. Why Amish use pemmican, while not as widespread as smoking or curing, pemmican fits the Amish ethic of using every part of the animal, planning ahead, and honoring traditional knowledge. It is especially useful for winter storage travel and market days emergency food during power outages provisions for long horse-drawn trips. Pemmican offers complete nutrition, protein, fat, and some carbohydrates, a powerful fuel for labor-intensive days. Conclusion: the timeless wisdom of Amish preservation in a society where freezers hum, plastic packaging fills the shelves, and expiration dates dictate decisions. The Amish way of preserving meat feels almost revolutionary. But their techniques aren't new. In fact, they're deeply old, refined over centuries by people who didn't have a choice but to understand food, seasons, and survival. These techniques are more than survival skills. They're reflections of a life philosophy that values self-sufficiency, simplicity, and stewardship of the earth. The Amish do not see meat as a commodity to be consumed quickly, but as a gift to be used fully, wisely, and without waste. What's remarkable is that their methods, though old, remain deeply relevant today. As more people seek to live off-grid, reduce reliance on electricity, and reconnect with traditional skills, the Amish provide a living model of what's possible. No refrigeration? No problem. Just salt, smoke, fat, patience, and wisdom passed from one generation to the next. In the quiet barns, smokehouses, and root cellars of Amish country, meat is preserved, but so is tradition, humility, and respect for the land that feeds us. And if you're hungry for deeper knowledge, stories of crisis-era food preservation, wild edibles, and more timeless homesteading lore, check the link below for Claude Davis's treasure trove of techniques. If you've enjoyed traveling back to basics and forward to resilience, tap like, leave a comment about which Amish method you're most eager to try, and hit subscribe so you won't miss our next video. Thanks for joining us. Stay warm, stay resourceful, and let the lessons of the past light your way into a cozier future.